Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we are going to discuss whether or not San Francisco 49ers GM John Lynch should be on the hot seat. So let's get started. Now, for those who are new to subscribing to my channel, thank you for tuning in. For those who already subscribed to my channel, again, thank you to you as well. Be sure for the both of you to flip on and turn on the bell notifications so you get notified when I go live or upload content. Also, I'm looking at my analytics. I'm noticing about 73% of you are still not subscribed to my channel yet. Watch all my videos and my content. So be sure and do me a solid and hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as you stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on breaking down San Francisco 49ers GM John Lynch's every move brick by brick, while analyzing each transaction that has been made since he became the GM back in 2017. Now, I like to break down my podcast into three parameters. Obviously, who are the people involved? The second one is why the move was made or potentially could be made. And the last but not least parameter is the instant gratification versus long-term gains. All right, so in this case, we're going to be talking about GM John Lynch, obviously, and why he should or shouldn't be on the hot seat at as we hit 2021. All right. So I like to break down John Lynch or any GM perspective, or talking about any GM's perspective, into three parameters. So I already talked about how I formulate each podcast, but there's also three parameters on how I grade each GM year in and year out. The first one is the undrafted free agents, right? Undrafted rookie free agents. But then aside from that, you look at the draft, obviously. And then the last but not least parameter is the free agent class, the ones that he brings in and the free agent losses and the bad ones that were signed. So you take that all into account, and then I formulate a grade. So let's go ahead and start with the 2017 season, GM John Lynch's first year as the San Francisco 49ers head man in office. All right. So in 2017, he picked up 5 free agents, starting with fullback Kyle Juszczyk. And he also picked up guys like Robbie Gould, Elvis Dumervil, K'Waun Williams, and of course traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. Those 5 players ended up being solid players for the organization moving forward. Obviously, Elvis Dumervil had a shorter tenure than the players mentioned. However, he did have just as great as an impact. If you watched my Twitter and YouTube receipts, you would know that he was a strong mentor. And I closely followed that during practice, where you would take players on the side field, teaching them pass rush moves, etc. So what GM John Lynch was trying to establish was a cultural identity that Kyle Shanahan can live with the players that were brought in, and help instill that culture. And I think when he did bring in those players, that's exactly what happened in San Francisco. Now, the only bad signing, to play a little devil's advocate here, was Malcolm Smith, that was inked to a $26 million contract. And that was a bad move because, again, it was a move where GM John Lynch thought he would be a plug-and-play player. Ultimately didn't happen, and the 49ers suffered for it by inking him to that big money contract. And you take that into account from the free agent class standpoint. You signed 5 good ones, only 1 bad seed. So I'm going to give GM John Lynch an A grade for that free agent class in 2017. Now let's move on to the 2017 NFL draft. He picked up a guy like tight end George Kittle in the 5th round, and then you roll over in the next round and pick up a hidden gem in the 6th with DJ Jones. That, to me, is one hell of a draft, even though he had whiffs in the 1st, and those were Solomon Thomas with the 3rd pick overall, where they traded back with the Chicago Bears 1 selection. I said in real time they should have went after Jamal Adams in my pre-draft analysis. He didn't. He ended up reaching for need, diminishing the value pick in Solomon Thomas, and then in the tail end of the 1st round, climbed back in and went after Reuben Foster, who had an injury history as well as some off-field behavior problems. Obviously, we know what happened at the NFL Combine, where he got kicked out. So with that being said, at number 34, when they had the 34th overall pick, I said the 49ers should target Alvin Kamara in my pre-draft analysis. They did not. They went ahead and traded up back into the tail end of the 1st round, got Reuben Foster. How's that going for you? He's no longer with the team, while Solomon Thomas didn't get his 5th-year option picked up by the team. So doesn't look good for GM John Lynch at the top of the draft. However, he did land George Kittle and DJ Jones, 2 foundational players that the team can build around for this foreseeable future. And which is why I give John Lynch a grade of a B for that 2017 draft class. All right. Now let's look at the third parameter, which is the undrafted rookie free agent. He did a nice job in finding 3 players, all 3 on the offense side of the football, and quarterback Nick Mullins, Matt Breida, and Kendrick Bourne. So grade A for GM John Lynch. Overall, he gets a B+ grade by me for the 2017 season because, again, he did find hidden gems in the later rounds, although whiffing in the first. He did pick up some nice free agent pieces to help establish a nice cultural identity there while building long-term growth. And finally, last but not least, he did double down on those gains by finding diamonds in the rough with those undrafted rookie free agents that I just mentioned. All right, now let's move on to the 2018 season, right? Starting with the free agent class, he picked up Richard Sherman, who had the same line of thinking of why they brought in Malcolm Smith, which is a plug-and-play coming over from the Seahawks scheme in that cover 3 defense. Well, Richard Sherman was a borderline all-pro potential player who, again, would establish a certain type of cultural identity, bring a certain swagger to the position, and a leadership mentoring presence. So I thought it was a smart play in real time. Obviously, Richard Sherman was a smart play because he helped him reach the Super Bowl and ultimately became a nice veteran presence in that locker room. But then GM John Lynch again made some questionable moves. He signed Jerick McKinnon and Weston Richburg and dished out $30 million in guarantee. And anytime you do that, it's not a good look. Those players have rarely played for the team, and they haven't done much since their time in San Francisco. Both those players are not even going to be with the team at the end of the year. Or at the beginning of this year, I should say. And you take it a step further, now let's look at the trades. They traded Daniel Kilgore to the Miami Dolphins for a 7th round pick. They traded Trent Brown. They traded Trent Brown to the New England Patriots for a 3rd round pick. So that was a smart play because they picked up Tarvarius Moore. So great job by GM John Lynch. And then they traded away Eli Harold to the Detroit Lions for a 7th round pick. So when you take that into account, yeah, GM John Lynch did make some power play moves where he got draft capital in return, but then he inked those 2 players who ended up being the team's Achilles heels over the course of the last few years because Jerick McKinnon had to restructure his contract. Weston Richburg has been nowhere to be seen. And again, when you take that into account, with the only positive is the free agent signing of Richard Sherman, I have to give a C grade here for that 2018 free agent class. 2018 free agent class, he gets a C. Now let's move on to the 2018 NFL draft. He did pick up Fred Warner in the 3rd round out of BYU. Again, another all-pro found in the later rounds of the draft and the best player at his respective position. Now, he did have, again, whiffs at the top of the draft in day 1 and day 2. He went after guys like right tackle Mike McGlinchey with a 9th pick overall, reaching for need again, diminishing the value of the pick. And then the team traded up for wide receiver Dante Pettis in the 2nd round. So that's 2 whiffs at the top of the draft for the 2nd consecutive year. And what only saved him, GM John Lynch, from getting a failing grade was Fred Warner. So anytime you get a Fred Warner in the draft, the best player at the position at middle linebacker, I'm going to have to give him a B overall. You can thank Fred Warner for that. GM John Lynch, we're seeing a trend here. He doesn't do well at the top of the draft, and he saves himself in rounds 3, 4, and 5. All right, we're seeing a trend here, guys. Now let's move on to the 2018 undrafted rookie free agent. He did pick up Jeff Wilson and Emmanuel Mosley. So anytime you pick up guys like that, of that caliber, who are basically diamonds in the rough and considered afterthoughts and make a 53-man roster, who are also played big roles in your 2019 Super Bowl season, you have to give an A grade there. So overall, GM John Lynch gets a B grade for the 2018 season. Now let's move on to 2019. In the 2019 season, GM John Lynch's 3rd year there, he did pick up Daniel Brunskill out of San Diego State. So that was a good find there. He's still with the team. He can be a very versatile chess piece that the team can have and moving forward. They didn't make any bad moves or any bad free agent signings, I would say, in 2019. So that's good by John Lynch there. However, He did somewhat mortgage the future when he traded for D Ford, giving up a 2020 second round pick, and he did it again for a half-year rental during the season with Emmanuel Sanders, trading him to the Denver Broncos, receiving him from the Denver Broncos and a 5th round pick, in return giving up a 3rd and 4th round pick. So now you're mortgaging your 2020 NFL draft class and the future because you gave up a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, and a 4th round pick for a half-year rental player and a player who was injury prone and had red flags. Now, the reason why Kansas City Chiefs defensive end D Ford was available at the time in a blockbuster deal was simply due to the fact that the Chiefs' Steve Spagnuolo was switching over from a 34 base to a 4-3 base defense. The 49ers obviously play a 4-3 base defense. What happened was they were just looking at D Ford as a situational pass rusher on 3rd downs, whereas the Kansas City Chiefs were looking at it from a financial standpoint, saying if we're going to dish out $85 million to a player like D Ford, he needs to be a 3-down player, not a pass rush one-trick pony. And that's what the Niners got. A one-trick pony who basically was damaged goods from the time he joined San Francisco. Obviously, he helped them get to the Super Bowl. So was it a smart play? Looking back, yes and no. He did get them to the Super Bowl, but ultimately they didn't win it. And no one cares about 2nd place. All right. Moving on to the 2019 draft, you look at guys where they hit on. This is a first for GM John Lynch. He hits on Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, and Dre Greenlaw in the 5th round. So anytime you hit on your day 1, day 2 picks, and then you roll over and pick up a 5th round steal in Dre Greenlaw, that's an A grade by default. I don't care if he had misses, which is going to be in this case Jalen Hurd in the 3rd and Mitch Wisnowski in the 4th. So he gets an A grade for that draft class. And as far as the undrafted rookie free agents, he didn't really sign anyone. Obviously, it was a 2019 Super Bowl team, so undrafted rookie free agent making a Super Bowl caliber team wasn't in the cards anyways, so he gets a passing grade for that. Overall, for the 2019 season, GM John Lynch gets a grade B. All right. Now, 2020, this is where it gets really hot this past season for GM John Lynch, and this is why I believe he's on the hot seat. Starting with the undrafted, let's not start with undrafted. Starting with the free agent class, he did pick up Kerry Hyder, who was on a 1-year contract in the contract year, balled out of control. The stats that he put up, people thought that Arik Armstead would be the guy to do it. Ultimately, it was not. It was Kerry Hyder Jr., played in the same position, and we all know what happened there. He didn't sign, GM John Lynch did not sign any free agents that were bad signings, or he didn't pick up any bad signings. So, all in all, a good job by GM John Lynch. However, where he struggles and where I am going to criticize him starts with the trades, starting with defensive tackle DeForest Buckner. And he went off and he traded DeForest Buckner. We all know the story. He traded DeForest Buckner to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2020 first round pick, which ended up being 13th overall. He then made another trade on draft day, trading Matt Breida for a 2020 5th round pick, which is fine. I'll call that an even trade. He shipped off Marquise Goodwin for a swap of 6th round picks, even trade. He then traded for Trent Williams, but gave up a 5th round pick and a 2021 3rd round pick. So there was no 3rd round pick for the 49ers this year because, again, they used that money, or that draft capital, I should say, to trade for Trent Williams, who likely is only a 1-year rental, just like Emmanuel Sanders was. So I'll get and talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. But moving on, they then trade for Jordan Willis, and they receive a 7th round pick for a 2022 6th round pick with the New York Jets. And I thought that Jordan Willis was a smart play because he bought a pass rush specialist presence, and he would really help that pass rush that was lacking early on in that midseason trade. Last but not least, I thought this was a smart play by GM John Lynch when he wiped his hands clean of Quan Alexander's contract. And in return, he got Kiko Alonso, who is no longer with the team. But I think they just wanted to wipe their hands clean of Quan Alexander's contract to the New Orleans Saints. And they picked up a 5th round pick in return. So when you take that into account, all those trades and all those moves that were made where you get draft capital in return, and you pick up a guy like Kerry Hyder Jr., but then you trade away defensive tackle DeForest Buckner, who is your all-pro defensive tackle, best defensive player, team captain on the team, that's going to set what I like to call the Buckner effect. And the Buckner effect, the Buckner domino effect, I should say, is going to take a toll on your body and on your team. Because who's going to take on the 3 technique? Now you look to the draft, right? You don't have DeForest Buckner, so what do? Okay, let's draft Javon Kinlaw to ease the blow of losing DeForest Buckner. Let's do that. That's fool's gold. And I said it in my pre-draft analysis that was fool's gold. Check my Twitter receipts. I said it was fool's gold to think that Javon Kinlaw or any other defensive tackle can replicate the production that DeForest Buckner commanded consistently on a daily basis because you're replacing all-pro talent with a rookie. And there is no all-pro talented rookie in that draft class. Even Derek Brown wouldn't be able to replicate that production. And even if it was by a committee approach, I didn't see it. And I didn't foresee it. And this is where GM John Lynch is going to get criticism from me. You don't trade away your best defensive player and then hopes of easing that blow by trading back one spot to take defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw when you should have stayed pat at 13 and did what I said in real time and selected Tristan Wirfs at number 13. Instead, you diminish the value of the pick, reaching for need, and then you compound that problem because you didn't pick Tristan Wirfs and you needed a blindside left tackle. So then you go out and trade for Trent Williams and give up a third-round pick in return, mortgaging your future for the following year for a half-year, one-year rental player, just like you did with Emmanuel Sanders and now this time Trent Williams. Trent Williams is no guarantee he's going to be back, but then you give up a third-round pick in return, mortgaging your future for a one-year rental. What's the point of that? When you should have just stayed pat. Oh my gosh, I'm getting heated because this is what I said John Lynch should have did. Just make me GM. I don't care. This is what I said John Lynch should have did in real time. You re-signed DeForest Buckner to a contract extension who was already playing on a fifth-year contract on a rookie deal. You then release Richard Sherman, $12.9 million cap savings. Use that money, roll that over into Buckner's future contract. Do not sign Arik Armstead. Instead, stay pat at 13. Draft Tristan Wirfs to replace left tackle Joe Staley. Instead, you compound that problem by moving back one spot and then selecting Javon Kinlaw to diminish the value of the pick to hoping of easing the blow of losing DeForest Buckner when you just should have took Tristan Wirfs in the first place because then you had no choice but to hit the panic button, go after a guy like Trent Williams who's a one-year rental, and then you mortgage your future by getting that player in return by giving up a third-round pick. What's the point of that? That's like, bro, you should have stayed calm, John Lynch. Whoa, let's ring it back a little bit. This team would have looked a lot different if DeForest Buckner was still on the team. And look what happens. Is Richard Sherman going to be signed this year? Oh yeah, that's right, he's not. Because why? Oh, they need to re-sign Fred Warner to a new deal, which I said and broke news on that on November 3rd. When everyone was telling me, oh, he's still on a rookie deal. I was like, okay, bro. Again, that's why his dad followed me, likes my stuff, comments on my stuff, says good stuff, brother. I mean, I'm just saying, give me thumbs up. It is what it is. And here we are today. So GM John Lynch, you should be on the hot seat because the Buckner domino effect has set its course and is now in motion, bro. And anytime you get rid of DeForest Buckner, you're going to be spinning your wheels, trying to replicate that type of production. And now you find yourself in a bind because instead of keeping Buckner and then staying pat at 13 to take Tristan Wirfs, you opted to trade Buckner, use that money for Arik Armstead, who's a complimentary role player at best, and then ease the blow at 13, getting a younger, cheaper guy in Javon Kinlaw, who, by the way, has Pro Bowl potential and will ball out of control this year because, again, Nick Bosa's coming back. He makes everyone around him better. So, of course, Arik Armstead's numbers can get inflated. And we're going to see a B-wide Stubblefield effect. For those who don't know, now you know. Now you know. And instead of taking Tristan Wirfs, like I said, at 13, you did the opposite. And now you traded for a one-year rental player, just like you did with Emmanuel Sanders. And there's no guarantee either one of those players is going to be returned because Emmanuel Sanders didn't return. He signed with the New Orleans Saints. And now what do you think What do you think Trent Williams is going to do? What do you think Silverback's going to do? He's going to try to test the market if you're not going to pay him. So was it really worth mortgaging your future by giving up a third, fourth, fifth round pick for those 1 year, half year rental players? when you could have just stayed pat, kept DeForest Buckner, took Tristan Wirfs at 13, saved the draft capital instead of reaching for need, diminishing the value of the pick, reaching for a player who may or may not be there next year? That's why in 2020, GM John Lynch goes from getting B grades, B plus grades, B grades, to now a D. That's what he got in 2020. And 2021 is going to be a year where he's on the hot seat because with a decreased salary cap dropping from 198.2 to about 180, it's going to get really interesting really fast. Well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to say. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as you stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.